Admiral Kurthel stood at the edge of the observation spire, its crystalline walls projecting a 360 holoscopic view of the cosmos. He watched the pale blue dot of Earth, so unassuming in the void, spin slowly against a tapestry of stars. Weeks of preparation had culminated in this moment, the Xyrath Dominion's first true campaign of expansion in over 4 centuries. Behind him, the Council of Nine assembled on the dais, their jeweled robes shimmering in the low light. Supreme Inquisitor Delanar, the highest authority on religious and prophetic matters, held a small obsidian tablet in his clawed hand. He tapped it twice, and ancient glyphs flickered into view, a series of warnings passed down through generations. Of Xyrath mystics, these inscriptions, Delanar began in a hushed drone, originated from our ancestors' encounter with the shepherds of the constellation Varga. They foresaw a race of warriors who would harness the fires of suns, who would retaliate against any who dared to sow conquest. He swept one wing toward the hologram of Earth. They called them the Children of the Solar Flame. General Sitha convened a low voice beside Kurthel. "Prophecies are worthless against our plasma lances and gravitic armor," she murmured, lips curling in disdain. "We hold the might of 10,000 warships. What can a handful of warriors do?" Kurthel clenched his jaw. He respected Sitha's martial prowess, but his own instincts tugged toward caution. "Legends," he said quietly, "often mask kernels of truth." Dalinar's voice rose to fill the chamber. "My lords, the omen is clear. Should we provoke the children of the solar flame, our dominion will be consumed by fire." His taloned hand hovered above the rotating earth. "Yet the Council of Nine has decreed that no warning, no myth shall stand in the path of destiny. We are Xyrath. We command the heavens themselves." A murmur of approval rippled through the council. Shields of authority clattered as feet shifted. Kurthel turned away from the dais, his eyes fixed on the planet that would soon bear the brunt of Xyrath ambition. The corridors of the spire thrummed with energy. Servitor drones scuttled along rails, delivering sealed orders to shipyards and armories. Kurthel walked the length of the command deck, passing rows of tactical stations ablaze with activity. Across the bridge, Lieutenant Arn brandished a tactogram. "Admiral, 300 carriers, 12 dreadnoughts, and the Light of Judgment Fleet are poised on hyperspace exit vectors. All systems report 100% functionality." Kurthel nodded, commenced the final countdown. He tapped a sequence into his console. 5 minutes to hyperspace jump. Around him, hundreds of beings, soldiers, engineers, astromancers held their breath. Many had never seen battle. Many more had never known fear. Soon, both states would change, leaving the bridge. Kurthel entered the sanctum of Echoes, a circular chamber where the oldest Xyrath artifacts were kept. Here, he paused before an alabaster sarcophagus carved with swirling constellations. Inside lay the remains of High Prophetess Virexa, the visionary who first documented the children's warnings. Her tomb bore a single inscription: "He who kindles the sun's wrath will see his empire turned to ash." Kurthel pressed a hand against the cool stone. The inscription pulsed faintly with residual energy. He whispered, "Forgive me, sister, but some paths are set in stone by those who dare." A shiver crawled up his spine as the sarcophagus runes glowed, but he dashed it aside. Duty awaited. Down in the vast shipyards, millions of Xyrath technicians oversaw the final rollout. Mile-long carriers glowed with antimatter cores. Frigates bristled with gravitonic turrets. Scout vessels polished their stealth fields until they shimmered like liquid night. The air was thick with the scent of ionized metal and ozone. Kurthel and Delanar descended in a gravitic lift. Workers snapped to attention. Engines roared as titanic ships lifted from docks. The ground shook with each departure. Kurthel felt the palpable surge of collective will, a dominion poised for conquest. "Observe," Delanar said, voice echoing. He pointed to a colossal ship entering final calibration. "That is the Sunbreaker, flagship of this expedition. Its reactor cores alone could power an entire planet for a century." A 12-meter holo of the Sunbreaker shimmered before them. Complex filaments of luminous energy threaded along its hull. Truly a marvel of Xyrath engineering, Kurthel admitted. Yet what? Dalinar's question trailed with an edge of foreboding. Kurthel closed his eyes. Legends do not perish because we refuse to believe in them. He sighed, but war spares no dreamer. The final assembly point was the hyperspace gate, a glittering nexus of crystalline arrays and tachyon conduits. Here, the fleet would emerge above Earth's sunlit hemisphere at dawn. Kurthal joined Delinar on the observation platform overlooking the gate. Outside, the first tendrils of solar light began to caress the horizon. Kurthal watched the sun rise over Zerthar's twin moons, casting long shadows across the gate structure. Delinar raised the obsidian tablet once more, one last invocation. He intoned in the ancient tongue, vibrations echoing through the chambers. The gate thrummed in response, blue-white energy dancing across its surface. Kurthal felt a tightening in his chest as he stepped back. The ritual complete, the fleet would leap through to Earth's orbit in mere moments. He turned to Delinar. "Are you ready to witness the children of the solar flame?" Kurthal asked. Delinar stared at the rising sun, his eyes reflecting both reverence and dread. "I am," he replied, voice low. "But I pray we do not awaken a fire we cannot contain." Kurthal offered no answer. The countdown displayed on a hovering holo reached 0. An ethereal hum swelled, and a cascading wave of hyperspace blossoms enveloped the gate. Each vessel was drawn in, slipping through the veils of space. Only the observation spire remained, its commanders resigned to history's verdict. Kurthal gripped the railing, watching the last distortions fade. In the distance, beyond the veil, Earth waited. And somewhere, in the deep tapestry of legend, a warning stirred at last. The hyperspace distortion rippled like liquid glass, then snapped outward in a cascade of prismatic light. In an instant, 300 Zyrith carriers, 12 dreadnoughts, and the formidable Sunbreaker flagship materialized above Earth's upper atmosphere. They hung in silent menace, dark monoliths set against the pale curvature of the planet. Wisps of ionized residue drifted away like cosmic jellyfish. The first contact on board the USS Horizon, a top-secret American orbital command center. Lieutenant Commander Mara Sinclair stared at the massive vessels on her holodisplay. Every streak of incoming data, from seismic tremors to electromagnetic scans, converged on one terrifying conclusion: unidentified fleet at geosynchronous orbit. Weapons signatures, plasma energy, and gravitic distortions. "They're not human." She leaned forward, voice taut. "General Unsell, they've arrived. We're detecting their power output, roughly to petajoules per volley. They can vaporize a city block from orbit." General Marcus Ansell's jaw clenched. "Transmit this to UN Space Command. Activate Protocol Nova. All nations engaged." He flicked his wrist, and the holo expanded to show defensive grids stretching from Cape Canaveral to Tycho Crater on the moon. Back on Earth, every military network lit up in unison. Russia's Soviet orbital railguns charged carbon rod slugs. China's Dongfang missile platforms hummed with liquid propellant rockets. Europe's laser ground array at Kafuska lit with a violet glow. Below, national capitals braced for impact. Opening salvo precisely 5:17 Earth Standard Time. The Zyrith fleet unleashed its opening salvo. Plasma lances, invisible until they struck, carved gashes of superheated gas through satellite clusters. 6 communications birds disintegrated in microseconds. 9 early warning radars went blind under the onslaught of gravitic mines that pulsed with artificial gravity fields, crushing circuits and cracking biospheres inside orbiting laboratories. Alarm klaxons echoed across the world. In the Pentagon's subterranean war room, Defense Secretary Lena Rosen barked, "Lock onto their carriers. Fire all counter-battery systems. Do not let them decimate our orbital network." Moments later, a pinpoint volley of railgun projectiles streaked upward. Each tungsten slug cloaked in electromagnets cut through Zyrith shielding. Like a hot knife through plasma, one carrier's flank ruptured, ejecting orange-white debris that glowed as it burned through. The EXOSPHERE.3, the human response in the ground, humanity's disparate militaries synchronized into the unified Earth Defense Force. Over decades of simmering tensions, humanity had quietly developed shared contingency protocols, blueprints, data, even joint command centers awaiting an existential threat. Now, that architecture came alive. In London, Admiral Priya Rajesh coordinated drone swarms over the English Channel. In New Delhi, Colonel Hassan al-Qadir activated electromagnetic pulse EMP croissants designed to disable any craft passing below 50 kilometers altitude. In Sao Paulo, the Brazilian Space Command launched grappler satellites to jam Xyrath tractor beams. All across the planet, civilians watched the skies with a mixture of terror and wonder. Social media exploded. Amateur footage showed distant flashes of light, trailing tendrils of energy, and the faint outline of a colossal ship drifting above Berlin. In living rooms and underground shelters, people whispered prayers, sent messages to loved ones, and steeled themselves for the unknown. 4. Duel in the Skisub of the Sahara. The European orbital frigate AEGIR, named after the North Sea god, bridged the gap between space and stratosphere. Captain Elena Miklovic toggled thrusters as a Xyrath battlecruiser glowed against the stars. "Deploy ion countermeasures," she ordered. The frigate's magnetic flux coils generated a shimmering dome that repelled plasma-welded projectiles. But the Xyrath adapted instantly, switching to gravitic torpedoes that warped through the field like fish through a net. Miklovic's voice tightened. "Reverse polarity. Charge the main capacitor." The AEGIR's railgun roared a high-pitched whine that cut the remote silence of space warfare. A 50-centimeter round fired, punching through the enemy cruiser's bow, coldly neutralizing its gravitic stabilizers. The crippled vessel spun into a spray of debris, a supernova of metal fragments orbiting the Earth. 5. Ground Zero. The megacity of Neo-Tokyo. Half a world away, in the spired megacity of Neo-Tokyo, residents woke to gargantuan silhouettes blotting out the dawn. The Xyrath flagship, Sunbreaker, hung overhead like an eclipse of engineered terror. Its underbelly bristled with converging energy nodes, each capable of releasing enough destructive force to level hundreds of square kilometers. Prime Minister Eiko Sato stood among the Emergency Crisis Cabinet on the 180th floor of the Central Urban Command Tower. Behind her, windows trembled as the flagship powered up its primary beam. "We have 10 minutes, the chief defense scientist, Dr. Ren Nakamura, reported. 10 minutes until they focus the sun's energy and burn us to cinders." Sato's eyes narrowed. "Then we make every second count. Launch the Kanpachi-class interceptors. Deploy the Aegis orbital shield. We may have one shot to deflect that beam." Below, automated turrets clicked into readiness. High-altitude interceptors, part jet and part rocket, streaked into the stratosphere. They harried the Sunbreaker's point defense rays, sacrificing themselves to keep Xyrath shields occupied. 6. The tide turns across missions and battlefronts. The pattern emerged. For every Xyrath tactic, humans devised a counter. The Dominions. Plasma lances proved devastating, but they drained capacitors swiftly. Human engineers reconfigured electromagnetic coil arrays to disrupt recharge cycles. After 3 days of brutal engagement, a direct hit from a repurposed Korean anti-missile magnetron beam overloaded a carrier's reactor, turning it into a drifting wreck. Lieutenant Commander Sinclair, aboard the USS Horizon, watched the real-time feed. She tapped her console, issuing new directives. "All ships, concentrate fire on enemy power conduits. Cut their energy supply. They cannot sustain their offense without it." The orders echoed through the unified Earth Defense Force. Soon, Xyrath vessels showed the first signs of systemic failure. Shields flickered, engines hiccuped, and plasma loops collapsed in on themselves. Smoke plumes of superheated antimatter trailed behind crippled cruisers as they limped away or tumbled back into the void. Their command crews ejected into the cold. 7. Personal valor in the Arctic Circle. The RFS Krasny Sever Russian Federation ship Red North raced toward a damaged Xyrath dreadnought. Lieutenant Anna Volkova, mission specialist and former cosmonaut, prepared the torpedoes, quantum destabilizers designed to shatter the enemy's hull. At the subatomic level. Her partner, Tactical Officer Samir Patel from India, loaded targeting. "Data, you have one shot. These enemy hulls regenerate nanolattices. The destabilizer must hit the central conduit." Volkova's gloved fingers hovered. "For Earth." She fired. The torpedo plunged through the dreadnought's weakened starboard hull. In a flash of emerald white, The entire ship vibrated, then detonated from within. The shockwave rippled through the ionosphere, visible as auroral curtains in the sky. 8. The Xyrith Respens Admiral Kurthal watched the destruction from the bridge of the Sunbreaker. His console glowed with cascading warnings: carrier losses, dreadnought failures, real-time battle damage. He gripped the hilt of his plasma saber, knuckles white. The prophecy's words echoed in his mind. He who kindles the sun's wrath. Supreme Inquisitor Delinar materialized beside him. Robes singed where dodged energy bolts had lanced the deck. They adapt faster than we calculated. He hissed. They fight with desperation born of survival. Kurthal's eyes hardened. Then we strike deeper. Target their energy nexus at EDC-01. Without it, they cannot power their planetary defenses. He keyed the command. Below, a squadron of spectral Xyrith scouts spilled into the stratosphere, cloaked in gravitic shadows. But on Earth, those attackers met the brunt of human ingenuity. Modified hypersonic drones, laser nets, and ablative counter-shields that pierced their stealth fields and shredded them mid-flight. 9. The brink of extinction be the end of the first week. The battle settled into a grim equilibrium. Xyrith losses reached 50 carriers. Humans counted over 100 defense satellites destroyed, and dozens of orbital platforms inoperable. Ground installations in Alaskan tundras, Saharan deserts, and Himalayan valleys lay in ruin. And yet, humanity endured. In a hastily constructed command center beneath the Swiss Alps, world leaders and scientists convened a crisis summit. Project Helios. The plan to weaponize the sun had moved from theory to pressing necessity. Dr. Aisha Kapoor presented augmentations to her satellite array, frequency modulators, magnetic flux concentrators, and thermal absorption matrices, calibrated to channel sunlight into a coherent beam. It's our best hope, she said. If we can strike their flagship and flagship alone, we might force a retreat or gain the leverage to negotiate peace. The gathered generals exchanged glances, with their orbital superiority waning. The Helios ray was humanity's wild card, a gamble to end the conflict in their favor or risk complete annihilation. Dawn broke over the Swiss Alps with an uncharacteristic stillness. In the cavernous underground complex of Project Helios, hundreds of engineers, physicists, and military advisors stared at the vast, concave array of focusing mirrors and modulation crystal lenses that filled the central cavern. The Helios array, humanity's last, desperate gambit, awaited its moment. Dr. Aisha Kapoor stood on a raised platform overlooking the array's control terminal. Fatigue etched lines beneath her eyes, but her posture was taut with resolve. Beside her, Lieutenant Commander Mara Sinclair ran a final systems check. Mirror segment 47 through 50 decalibrated. Sinclair reported, voice steady. Flux stabilizers are within 10 parts per million. Thermal absorption matrices are at operational thresholds. Ready to engage on your mark. Aisha nodded. Activate the sun tracking gyros. We need perfect alignment with the Dawn Terminator. The cavern hummed as massive servomotors groaned, slewing the assembly toward the rising sun, slicing the horizon at just the right angle. Above them, the Xyrith flagship Sunbreaker, repairing its damage from weeks of skirmishes, loomed like an immovable fortress in low orbit. It tracked Earth's rotation, its automated defense nets sweeping for incoming threats from their viewports. The helio beams of sunlight slanted across its hull, dancing between rows of turrets and energy conduits. General Marcus Unsell entered the control room, flanked by UN Envoy Ambassador Li Wei. He cleared his throat. Dr. Kapoor, this is it. Once we fire, there's no turning back. If we miss, we risk the array's destruction and any hope of negotiating from strength. Aisha's hand hovered over the engagement key. She took a slow breath. We won't miss. All our efforts have led to this moment. She glanced at Mara. Lieutenant Commander, bring up the targeting grid. On the holographic display, a wireframe Sunbreaker rotated slowly. Thin lines converged on its primary energy conduit's bright nodes, where the Xyrith tapped stellar energy. Round them, clusters of human satellites orbited in protective patterns, ready to relay commands and supply supplementary power. Locking on primary conduit, Sinclair said, her fingers dancing across the interface. Beam coherence at 100%. Heat flux capacity at maximum. Initiating channeling sequence. Ignition. Low-frequency thrum pulsed through the cavern. As enormous diamond-like crystals nestled at the array's focal point began to glow, light from 1,000 mirror panels converged, intensifying until it was almost blinding. Technicians donned protective visors, monitoring energy readouts as temperatures soared. Channel 1 stable, Channel 2 stable, Channel 3 over 95%, shouted Dr. Yasmin El-Badri, head of thermal dynamics. We're green across the board, in orbit. The Sunbreaker's sensors flared. Its AI-driven targeting systems registered a massive incoming energy signature. An immense column of solar photons compressed into a narrow, hyper-focused beam. Alarms blared throughout the Zyrith bridge. Admiral Kurthel stood at the center console, his cape swirling like a dark flame. Report, he demanded. Unknown energy beam, the chief tactician snarled. It's penetrating our outer defense layer. Shields at 60% and falling. Kurthel's talons curled around the console rail. Divert power to the dorsal shields. Prepare countermeasures. 2. The solar lance back on Earth. The beam stabilized a razor-thin shaft of sunlight stretching from the array's cavernous aperture through the atmosphere to the blackness of space. On the holographic feed, it appeared as a streak of pale gold, poised to strike, firing. Aisha whispered. She pressed the final key. Instantly, the beam brightened to searing brilliance. In orbit, the Sunbreaker's shields flickered under the onslaught. Layers of energy fields strained, then ruptured in spirals of fractal light. The primary conduit glowed white-hot, veins of power igniting like wildfire beneath its hull plating. Captain Elena McClovick, commanding the AEGIR frigate on interception duty, watched in awe. They did it, she murmured. They actually did it. The Sunbreaker's bridge convulsed, power conduits overloaded, venting gravity stasis fields and plasma waste in uncontrolled bursts. Reactor cores whined like wounded beasts. Then silence. A single explosion bloomed from the flagship's core, so violently it rocked the surrounding vessels. The shockwave shattered nearby carriers, rupturing hulls and sending them spinning into the void. A firestorm of debris blossomed around the Sunbreaker, painting space with orange-white embers. Counterstreak Earth. The Helios ray's beam retracted automatically as the fissure in the flagship's hull opened. The control room erupted in cheers and relieved laughter. General Unseld allowed himself a tight smile. Status: Sinclair toggled the feed. Sunbreaker destroyed. Secondary explosions in proximity. Multiple carriers disabled or structural compromised. Zyrith fleet is in disarray. Ambassador Lee exhaled. A weapon worthy of legend. Dr. Kapoor, you have secured the day. But Aisha's jubilation was tempered by caution. She scanned damage reports. Hold on, she said, frowning. We still have a dozen dreadnoughts above the Pacific. Their gravitic banks are charging. They'll retaliate. Her warning came in time. Moments later, energy signatures flared on the gravimetric spectrum. A volley of dense, gravity-warped projectiles aimed toward coastal Asia and North America. Sirens wailed the impending doom. Deploy countermeasures, General Unseld roared. Launch the gravitonic disruptors. Mobilize the orbital interceptor drones. In orbit, Captain Rourke of the USS Vigilant unleashed a swarm of autonomous fighters equipped with polarity inverters. The squadron zipped through the gravity projectiles, each drone skimming the hulls of human satellites to absorb kinetic energy and rechannel it into electromagnetic pulses that detonated the incoming warheads harmlessly. Below, coastal defenses fired high-altitude rockets into the incoming projectiles' flight paths, shattering them before impact. Cities trembled under sonic booms, but catastrophe was averted. 4. Turning the tide. Be midday. The battle had shifted decisively, with their flagship gone and dreadnoughts reeling. The Zyrith command initiated full retreat orders. On every front, human vessels, frigates, cruisers, and converted cargo ships harassed the dwindling enemy fleet, targeting engines and navigation arrays to strand them in low orbit. Lieutenant Anna Volkova, aboard the RFS Krasny Sever, tracked a crippled Zyrith carrier drifting near the International Space Elevator tether. We're in range, she reported. Torpedoes locked on, ready to fire. Go ahead, ordered Captain Sergei Ivanov. The torpedo fired, punching through the carrier's stern. The explosion rocked the tether's outer station, but structural integrity held. Debris burned in the upper atmosphere, streaking downward in fiery arcs across the globe. The Unified Earth Defense Force celebrated small victories from solar sails used as impromptu rams against scout vessels to improvised magnetic nets that ensnared fractured dreadnoughts. Humanity's ingenuity and indomitable will had turned a dire situation into triumph. The aftermath as the sun set on that fateful day, the Xyrath remnants slipped away into hyperspace, trailing ship-class warnings of damaged hyperdrives and unstable fold engines on Earth's major broadcast networks. The message was unanimous. The alien armada had been repelled. The solar lance had proven the decisive weapon. Humanity stood unbowed. In the Kremlin, President Sergei Volkov addressed the world. Today, we faced an enemy that dwarfs our differences. Today, we fought not as Russians or Americans, Chinese or Indians, but as humans united. Let this be the dawn of a new era of cooperation among nations. In Geneva, the UN Security Council drafted preliminary terms for parley with the Xyrath survivors, conditions for withdrawal, disarmament of remaining hostiles, and the foundation of an interstellar accord. Far above, in the charred remains of orbit, the cosmic dust of battle drifted between the stars, and somewhere, amid the wreckage of a once proud empire, the Xyrath would tell their own stories of unexpected resistance, of how humans once deemed primitive had wielded the power of their own sun to undo ambition. Below, on planet Earth, people emerged from shelters to look at the sky. Children pointed at the dawn, asking parents if the stars were safe again. Old veterans of mid-century conflicts clasped hands in quiet gratitude, and scientists looked to the heavens, dreaming of the day when humanity would walk among the stars not as conquerors, but as equals in an uncertain galaxy. The chapter closed not just on a battlefield, but on a world transformed. Humanity's fury had been unleashed, and with it, a promise: never again would the threat from beyond be faced divided. Bound together by fire, they would stand guard over their home, whatever the heavens might bring. The void beyond Earth's atmosphere was littered with the wreckage of Xyrath ambition. Twisted hull fragments and drifting escape pods glinted like cold stars against the black. From the battered bridge of the damaged frigate USS Vigilant, Captain Elias Rourke watched the remnants of the enemy fleet signal for parley. Transmitting open channel request, he reported to Commander Mara Sinclair. On the view screen, a lone Xyrath cruiser, scarred by plasma burns and crippled gravitic drives, drifted slowly toward the rendezvous point above the Indian Ocean. A human envoy ship, the IHS Concordia, maneuvered alongside. In the sealed diplomatic chamber, representatives of Earth's Unified Council prepared for first contact. Ambassador Li Wei of China, General Marcus Unsel of the United States, Admiral Priya Rajesh of Europe, and Colonel Hassan Al-Qadir of India. The hatch hissed open. Two Xyrath envoys glided in on anti-grav fields. Ambassador Kurthal's eldest daughter, Lady Surthara, her chitinous features lined with exhaustion, and Supreme Inquisitor Delinar, robes singed but spirit unbroken. They bowed with regal courtesy. Lady Surthara's mandibles quivered. Honored delegates of Earth, she intoned, voice resonant and weary. We accept the Council's terms, too. The Treaty of Starlit Peace. Over the next 3 days, negotiations unfolded in the vaulted halls of the IHS Concordia. Each clause was debated with meticulous care. Immediate cessation of hostilities, all Xyrath weapons disabled, no further military action against human targets, withdrawal from Earth's system, surviving Xyrath vessels to depart to designated holding coordinates in neutral space, disarmament of hyperdrive technology, Xyrath to dismantle weapons-grade drive cores under UN supervision, reparations and reconstruction, Xyrath to contribute resources toward the restoration of ruined orbital platforms and coastal defenses, Galactic Non-Aggression Pact, a binding agreement prohibiting future acts of hostility between humans and Xyrath with provisions for mutual protection against third-party threats. Ambassador Li Wei pressed a stylus to the illuminated treaty plank, etching each signature in luminous ink. When Lady Surthara affixed her claw, the chamber was suffused with a hush so profound it felt as though the universe held its breath. General Unsel exhaled, voice thick with relief. By this accord, two civilizations step back from the brink. May it endure as long as the stars themselves. 3. Ashes of a fallen dream. As the Xyrath fleet prepared to depart, Earth's engineers boarded the drifted vessels to salvage what could be repurposed. Among the salvage teams was Lieutenant Anna Volkova aboard the RFS Krasny Sever, her curiosity tempered by residual caution. In the Sunbreaker's shattered command deck, she discovered a shattered sarcophagus bearing the name of High Prophetess Virexa. The alabaster stone cracked, but the ancient runic inscription remained legible. He who kindles the sun's wrath will see his empire turn to ash. Volkova traced the glyphs with a gloved finger. In that moment, she understood that they had not merely won a war, but fulfilled an age-old warning. She took a fragment of the inscription back to Earth for study, a tangible monument to the price of hubris. IV, rebirth and reflection. Months passed, and Earth began to reshape itself around this new reality. Former rival nations cooperated on planetary defense networks, research stations in Antarctica, and the Sahara blossomed into joint human-Xyrath scientific outposts, exploring sustainable energy and deep space communications. Children in Tokyo studied Xyrath language alongside Mandarin and Spanish. Artists in Paris wove alien motifs into tapestries. Orchestras in Rio and Johannesburg performed symphonies that blended human strings with Xyrath crystalline chimes. In Geneva, the newly established Council for Interstellar Affairs convened its first session. Humans and Xyrath sat side by side, drafting protocols for shared starship construction, cultural exchange, and joint defense against unknown cosmic threats. Supreme Inquisitor Dalinar, once the voice of conquest, now presided over a subcommittee on xenolinguistics, his fervor redirected toward mutual understanding via new legend in the quiet halls of the United Interstellar Council headquarters. Dr. Aisha Kapoor addressed a gathering of diplomats and journalists. Behind her, a hologram replayed the moment the Helios ray's beam struck the Sunbreaker, reminder of humanity's ingenuity and resolve. Let this moment remind us, she said, voice clear, that even in our darkest hour, we wield the power not only to destroy, but to forge alliances that transcend species and star systems. We have learned that legends hold truths, and warnings must never be ignored. Lady Surthara, seated in the front row, inclined her head in solemn agreement. Beside her, Lieutenant Commander Sinclair reflected on the path that had brought them here, a path of fire and ashes, sacrifice, and valor. Vi, epilogue, echoes in the void far beyond the Oort cloud. The remnants of the Xyrath fleet drifted toward their new home in neutral territory. Among the survivors, tales of the children of the solar flame circulated in whispered awe. Some elders wept, mourning a broken empire. Others, inspired by Earth's unity, dreamed of renewal. On Earth, the night sky shone brighter than ever, unshadowed by fear of invasion. Stargazers in every hemisphere looked upward, no longer with dread, but with curiosity and hope. And across the galaxy, a message was carved into the annals of interstellar lore. Aliens were warned, never attack. Humans, now their empire is ashes. A cautionary tale for all who would challenge the fire of a united species, and a promise that, come what may, humanity would stand vigilant, guardians of their home and ambassadors to the stars.